Hello students, and welcome to the CompTIA Tech Plus exam course brought to you by Third Level Technology. I am your instructor, Jim Herbie. In this episode, we're going to begin the final module in the exam objectives, Module 6, which covers security. This episode will discuss Section 6.1, Security Fundamentals. Let's begin. We will start our discussion of security fundamentals with the CIA triad. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the three core security principles. Each of these will handle a different aspect of proper security for our networks. Confidentiality, the C, is ensuring that only authorized and identified users can access our data. We want to keep access to our sensitive and critical business data, as well as access to our public cloud data, to be secure. I is integrity. Integrity is ensuring that our data remains accurate and consistent. We do not want our data to be modified or tampered with in any way. A is availability. Availability is ensuring that all of our systems, cloud, and data are accessible and available to our users when needed. The CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, will appear as three of your important security principles throughout your career. Email privacy is protecting all of the messages we send over the network from unauthorized access and capture by an attacker. Email privacy involves the use of encryption. Encryption is ensuring that all of the information contained within our email messages is encoded and is encrypted along the entire path from source to destination. With email, we also should enable our spam and phishing filters. A spam filter will identify unknown or unrecognized messages and isolate them. Phishing filters will identify any messages that have unknown attachments or suspicious links that might be conduits for users to access a malicious site. File sharing is ensuring that all of our shared documents are private, encrypted, and isolated from unauthorized access. File sharing uses access control lists, or ACLs. ACLs allow us to create rules and permissions for which individuals can view or edit specific files. When doing file transfers, we should use encrypted methods. This would include SFTP, the Secure File Transfer Protocol, and HTTPS, the S stands for secure, which allows us to encrypt all of our web traffic. These are two common ways that we can ensure we have proper encryption security with our file sharing. If we are using a cloud platform, we also can integrate all of our activity logs to track user access. PII stands for Personally Identifiable Information. PII data is any type of information or data point that can identify an individual's identity. These would be data points such as your social security number, your name, your address, your date of birth. If you are using any type of storage, all of the data should have data at rest encryption. We should have proper access controls to prevent any unauthorized users from accessing PII data. There are certain parts of the world, such as the European Union, that have legislative statutes that provide very heightened requirements for people to protect others' data. If you have any unauthorized disclosure of personal data, this can not only lead to theft, but also legal consequences if you have some type of identified obligation or trustee relationship for that data. GDPR that we mentioned is the General Data Privacy Regulations, European Union regulation that allows individuals to govern their data privacy. EU citizens maintain rights over their personal data. This is similar to property rights, including how your data can be accessed by third parties, making corrections to errors, and deleting personal data at the request of the individual. Any organization within the EU must obtain clear consent from the individual before collecting any of their personal data, selling it, or allowing third-party access. And non-compliance results in very significant financial fines and legal penalties. Cookies are small files that we store on an end user's host device to remember user preferences and session information. It allows a user to access multiple sites and allow the cookies to track user activity for targeted advertising. As the end user, we can manage or block cookies through our browser settings. It is a good practice to disable cookies that come from unverified websites or third parties. Next is the AAA framework, AAA. This stands for Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. Your AAA framework is another way that we can structure our security policies. The first A, Authentication, is verifying a user's identity. We do this through passwords, usernames, PIN numbers, and biometrics. All these are different ways we can verify a user's identity. Biometrics is using an individual's physical characteristics to verify their identity. This would include fingerprints, eye scans, voice prints, and facial recognition. The second A is Authorization. Authorization is determining what resources an individual user is able to access in our storage and our network. We want to use access control lists, permission levels, to allow our network to be secure from users accessing information they shouldn't. The third A is Accounting. Accounting is how we track all of our user activities. We use accounting logs for internal and external audits, as well as to show adherence to legal compliance regulations. Non-repudiation is ensuring that a user cannot deny performing an action regarding data. One way we enforce non-repudiation is digital signatures. Digital signature is a way that we can identify proof of origin of a message or file. Non-repudiation is essential for legal and compliance. We need to ensure that when we are dealing with sensitive and critical data, that we can verify authenticity, as well as providing chain of custody, which is ensuring that data has not been tampered with through the process of collection. MFA stands for Multi-Factor Authentication. MFA is an authentication method that requires the user to provide 2 or more methods to verify their identity. Each method of verification is called a factor. There are several common factors in authentication. Something you know is a password or a PIN number. It's an authentication method that you remember. Something you have is an authentication method in your possession. This can be a hardware token or a smart card for a badge reader. Something you are is your biometrics, your fingerprints, your eye scans, your facial recognition. A new type of factor is somewhere you are. This is using location services and triangulation to identify where a user physically is to make sure they're within the defined network boundaries. MFA is used with our end user banking and online accounts. We use them in the enterprise to help us reduce the risk of compromised passwords. Related is SSO, single sign-on. Single sign-on is authentication where a user logs on once and their validation will allow them to access multiple systems and apps without having to re-enter their credentials. Single sign-on is centralized authentication. We have servers that handle all of your identity verification and all of the different tokens and authorizations to allow a user to access certain sites and apps. If an attacker is able to compromise your single sign-on, they will gain access to all of the resources, websites, and apps that you have integrated within the SSO framework. Permission levels are defining the access that a user has to our network systems and files. Read is viewing a file, write is modifying, execute is running a file, and delete is removing it from the system. We also can assign permission levels to individuals based on their role within the network. Administrator permission levels, standard permission levels, and guest permissions are all different levels we have. We have to ensure that all of our proper permission levels are assigned to individual users as well as their groups. If we use grouping of any of our staff, permission levels will apply to all within that group unless we identify specific deviations from that. We can identify specific permissions that come with the job, and then the individual that moves into that position will assume those permission levels. When we are creating our permission levels, we want to use the least privilege model. also called the principle of least privilege, is granting a user only minimum access to files and network resources that they need to perform their job. It limits users from going into other departments or accounts for misuse or compromise. We should regularly review and audit all of our privilege levels. We want to adjust any modifications to our security policies, any changes in individual users with their role within the company, or users that have exited the company through termination or moving on to other opportunities. These are all aspects in making sure we are using least privilege model properly. Accounting logs are how we record system events, user activity, and security breaches. We use accounting logs with our security audits. This is providing updated refreshers to our individual users and providing reports for compliance reporting about the security steps we use to protect our data. Accounting logs should be encrypted and stored securely. We don't want any unauthorized people to have access to logs and the ability to modify them. We should regularly review all of our accounting logs and identify any suspicious patterns of unauthorized activity by third parties. Location tracking is how we can monitor the geographical position of a device or user. Location tracking is used in the MFA factor, somewhere you are. Your physical location must be within the network's range or you will not authenticate. Location tracking helps us to identify any lost or stolen devices. Track a user's location over a period of time. All of these are very helpful data points, but there are privacy concerns. An individual's physical location has an element of privacy unless they're in a public space. And lastly, we will discuss web browser history. Your browser history is a record of all of the websites that are visited by a user, and that history and sequence is stored within your browser. Your browser history is used to improve targeted advertising by third-party vendors. A best practice is to clear your browser history periodically. This helps to protect not only your web privacy history, but also to reduce any information that can be available to third parties on shared devices. One practice you can use with your web browsers is private mode or incognito mode. This is allowing your browser to not store any of your user history, cookies, or tracking information. However, your ISP will still be able to see all of your websites that you visit because they are managing all of your internet activity and access. That will conclude our discussion of Section 6.1, Security Fundamentals. In our next episode, we'll move on to Section 6.2 in the objectives and discuss security best practices. We thank you again for following along in the episodes and the course, and wish you best of luck in your studies. Enjoy the rest of your day.